Welcome to 20 years of a choral pilgrimage. This week I'm going back to the second choral pilgrimage, which actually spanned the concert season from October 2001 to July 2002. Once again, we started in York and finished in Canterbury. This time, 16 concerts. How very apt. And the programme had a title, The Flowering of Genius. We took you back in time to the summer of 1553 and what transpired after that. The Reformation had happened, King Henry VIII had died a few years earlier, and one of his daughters was Queen of England. Mary Tudor was to annul the exile of Cardinal Pole and, to the horror of the majority of the English people, marry the heir to the Spanish throne, Prince Philip. And here he is, with Mary Tudor. Philip had brought over his entire entourage, which included a choir, but not just any choir, his Capella Real. And there weren't only just singers, there were also instrumentalists. He brought over with him 13 instrumentalists playing cornet, dulcian, sackbut and shawm. Now, as a result, I suspect quite a few Spanish composers were introduced to the English congregations for the very first time. Francisco Guerrero, Alonso Lobo, and the most famous of them all, Thomas Luis de Victoria, but I only have a very small picture of him. But it does have this wonderful quote from Thomas Luis de Victoria: "Music is not man's invention, but his heritage from the blessed spirits." Now, as a young man, Victoria went to Rome, the sort of epicenter of music, and he spent many years there. And then he returned later on in life to his homeland, to Madrid, to the Monasterio de Descalzos Reales, the monastery of the barefooted nuns. He devoted his whole life to the church. He was a mystic, priest, composer, singer, organist, all rolled into one. Pretty incredible person. And to my knowledge, he didn't actually write a single piece of secular music. But the nearest he got to it, I think, is in his Song of Songs. And the piece I want to concentrate on today is Victoria's Vadam et circuibo. Now, I don't think Victoria wrote a single piece of secular music. He devoted his whole life to the church. But the particular piece I'm going to choose is actually Victoria's most sensual. It's Vadam et circuibo civitatem. And it's basically a Song of Songs text. The Song of Songs was written a few hundred years before the birth of Christ, and it was pagan love poetry in its origin, but it became synonymous with the Virgin Mary. But this shows Victoria in his great art of word painting. The whole start, "I will arise and go about the city." You notice the phrases "rise," "I will arise," just simulating that. On the second page, they're winding around the city. They're walking around the city so that the parts are winding around each other. Really quite beautiful. I love this bit here. It's sort of on the third page of music here. "I have searched for him and not found him, que sivi illum et non inveni." And I just bring the choir down to a piano on that, really painting the words. The first section ends just quite amazingly. The words are, "Tell him, tell him, tell him that I faint for his love." And he repeats this section over and over again, starting the soprano parts, going to the tenors, going to the basses. But then the altos have it again, sopranos, and he's just piling on the emotion as if it's all too much. Quite amazing end to the first part of this glorious motet. Now, the second part starts with a question. The choir always laugh at me when I ask them to sort of have a quizzical face about them. "What manner of man is your love that you charge us thus?" It's a beautiful, beautiful moment for the men's voices, but then it's answered by the top three voices, the ladies. "My love is fair and rosy, chosen from thousands." It's really beautiful. Now, The false relation, many of you have heard what the false relation is. The false relation is something that's very symptomatic of English Tudor music. It's the clash of major and minor at exactly the same time. In Victorian times, they thought this was so gross that they took them out. They had to say it was either major or minor. Couldn't be both. And this was a sort of an idea that was very much banned in Europe. Disciples of Palestrina, really, you were not allowed to do it. So here's Victoria, bearing in mind he had spent a lot of time in Rome. We have an E minor chord, but no, we have E major. So we have the G natural in the second tenor parts and then the G sharp in the soprano parts, a false relation. But what's really interesting to me is that just before that, he said, talis est delectus meus. Such is my love. But could this be talis? Talis is my delight? Anyway, just a little whimsical thought of mine. I'm probably completely wrong. So we go through this wonderful central motet. We get to the very last section, Ascendit in palmum, and we have Victoria rising. The phrase is rising. He has climbed the palm tree. At the very end, the most glorious ending, et apprehendit fructus eius, and grasp its fruit. And at this point, I ask the choir to be really sonorous and rich in the way they sing this. This is the most amazing motet. So, sit back and listen to Victoria's Vadam et circuibo.